And I'm proud that our district gets more calls and emails than any district in the country, though now I'm sure that's we may have some competition now, but to me it just says how engaged people are, and yes, it matters. And I want you to
people answer back, nobody else does.
Give it up for my people. Phenomenal job every day of making sure that they are getting back to you. I was just on the plane coming back from DC, and I had a flight attendant who pulled me aside and said, Congresswoman, I just want to thank you because your staff helped me make sure I got my citizenship interview. And he has his interview coming up shortly. He's going to be a U.S. citizen. And I should just say, if you haven't reached out to our office, if you do have any issues with any federal agency, we are happy to do everything we can to resolve those. It was much easier in the last administration, but we're still going to do our best to try and resolve those now. So this is my third town hall in just 6 weeks. Unlike many Republicans across the country who are refusing to do town halls, I am here because I want to hear from you. I want to have the conversation about what's happening. I want to answer your questions. And I want to help ensure that we are all doing everything we can to protect our country. So I'm going to start with just a few comments, and then we'll open it up for questions, and we've got a whole process for that. If you've never been here before, we're very strict now. We've done over 120 town halls, so we know how to do these so that everyone gets, or as many people as possible get a chance to weigh in. It is an incredibly dangerous time in the country, and I just want to start by saying I share the outrage, I share the fear, I share the frustration, the anger, all the things that you are feeling. I want to validate those things because they are incredibly real as we deal with these unconstitutional and illegal actions that are happening with the Trump administration, the funding cuts, the attacks on Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security, the firings of veterans and civil servants across every single agency, the stifling of dissent, of any disagreement, of free speech, and of course the targeting of immigrants, of trans people, of poor people, and vulnerable communities. There is so much happening every day that I now get like a briefing every day of all the things that have happened, and I'm constantly trying to keep up. But I'll start with just what happened last week in Congress. If you followed it, you knew that last Friday we had a government funding deadline. And this is actually a year delayed, this funding deadline, because we haven't been able to come to agreement between Democrats and Republicans on how to continue to fund the government. So we've been operating under what's called a continuing resolution. That just means that you extend the time. The levels stay the same as they were before, but you extend the time so that both parties can come to the table and try to reach an agreement. Well, that deadline was Friday, and if we hadn't come to an agreement, the government would have shut down. And ahead of that agreement, ahead of that deadline, Republicans and Democrats were working together to come to an agreement. So Senator Patty Murray, our great senator from the state of Washington, and Senator Susan Collins on the Republican side of the Senate, Rosa DeLauro, and Tom Cole on the House side. We're all working together to try to reach that agreement. Instead, what Republicans did is they pulled out of the negotiations and they put forward a partisan spending bill. And the partisan spending bill was not a continuing resolution, some people called it that, but it did not leave the levels the same. It actually increased the levels for defense spending, and it cut the levels for domestic spending. And so it cut veterans care, it cut public safety, it cut airline safety and food safety, it cut housing. So it was all things that we as Democrats would never agree to. And then they said, if you don't agree to this, we're going to shut down the government. Actually, they said, you're going to shut down the government. How does that work? When you have control of the House, the Senate, and the White House, you are the party that governs. And it is your responsibility to get the votes that you need. If you think you can pass it on your own, pass whatever thing you want to pass. But if you need Democratic votes, then you have to come and negotiate. So I'm very proud that in the House, under Hakeem Jeffries' leadership, We all, but one Democrat, voted no on that bill. And that was quite a feat, but it was clear for everyone that that was the wrong thing to do. We couldn't just agree to their partisan funding bill. Well, it still passed because in the House it's a simple majority. So they have a simple majority, and it passed by just a couple of votes. In the Senate, when it goes to the Senate, then there is something called the filibuster, which requires 60 votes, and it has been used against us over and over. And if you recall, I've called for the filibuster to be eliminated because I think we should have a simple majority, and if Republicans want to do terrible things when they're in charge, then people will see that they want to do terrible things. And when we get into office, we can raise the minimum wage, we can provide universal health care, we can make sure that we are providing universal child care, all the things, and people will see it, they'll be able to make a real choice. But what happens now is you need 60 votes to allow a bill to move forward in the Senate. So it went to the Senate, and because they only have 53 Republicans, they needed 8 Democratic senators to pass this, or 52 Republicans. They needed 8 Democratic senators to pass this. We thought that the Senate would hold just like the House did. And I'm very sad to say that the Senate caved. And that 10 Democratic senators voted for that bill. And it passed, and it was signed into law by Donald Trump. This has caused huge outrage across the country. It's caused a rift, I will be honest, between Democrats in the House and Democrats in the Senate. But more importantly, I think, it has caused a real confusion about how do we go forward. Because I believe we have to use every lever in our toolbox, every tool in our toolbox, to prevent the terrible things that they're going to do. Nobody wants to shut down the government. But if we are afraid that they're going to use that threat against us every time, what happens the next time there's a national abortion ban attached to a funding bill? What happens when they try to pass their $4.5 trillion tax cuts for the wealthiest to pass a funding bill and threaten us with a government shutdown? I believe the American people will be on our side as long as we are fighting for the American people. As long as we are fighting to say, no, you cannot take away our Medicaid, our Medicare, our Social Security, our housing, our veterans' benefits. No, we will not stand for that. Right? And so I'm super grateful to Senator Gray. She and I were texting with each other over the course of 48 hours, almost every minute of every hour of every day. She was a real champion on this, and she obviously voted no. Senator Cantwell voted no. All the Democrats in our delegation voted no, but it passed. And so I think that there is a real challenge here because we cannot afford to not stand up. Donald Trump and his billionaire shadow president, Elon Musk, are literally destroying the government at breakneck pace. And they're going piece by piece. They are at breakneck speed, They're going piece by piece. They're destroying they're ignoring all the checks and balances. When somebody says Article 1 powers, I have a feeling this room knows what that is. That means that Congress has the authority to appropriate funds. And the president does not. That's in Article 1 of our Constitution, right? And so that says that the president only has power to do certain things, and it is not to authorize and appropriate money. That is our job. And yet, what is happening is that things that we appropriated, whether it's for USAID or veterans health care or capital projects, infrastructure projects, all of science and research, all of those things are being eliminated. And while he hasn't yet eliminated the Department of Education or the CFPB, these are agencies established by Congress. What is happening is he is cutting the staff at those agencies so dramatically that they won't be able to function. And the threat, of course, is to slash Social Security and Medicare, which Elon Musk has called the big entitlements that we have to eliminate. And by the way, they're not entitlements, they're earned benefits. Right? You paid into them, you get to take out of them when you retire. That's the whole point. But in addition, the $4.5 $500 billion tax cut that they want to pass requires, with the budget resolution that will be coming up for a vote soon, requires that they slash $880 billion for Medicaid. And that is inconceivable. I was just at CMAR this morning, a community health clinic that that services people, primarily 60 to 70%, I think they said, was Medicaid funding, right? So this is seniors in nursing homes, this is pregnancy services for low-income families, births, etc. And so this is, I think this is what we're dealing with. And the reality is that for decades, Republicans have been trying to undermine trust in government. It's why our office works so hard to make sure you get the answers you need from federal agencies, because we know that they aren't always responding as quickly as they want, because guess what? Those numbers have been slashed. The staff has been slashed. Are there improvements that can be made? Of course, we all want to do that. But I know you won't buy into the idea that what they're doing is cutting waste, fraud, and abuse. That is absolutely not what's happening. You don't slash half of all workers in an agency or everybody that's so-called probationary. By the way, when you are probationary, do we have any federal workers here? Oh, give them a hand. When you are probationary, it could mean that you just started and you have 2 years to finish your probationary service. You may be getting exemplary reviews all along the way, but there's just a set period of time. Or it could mean that you got a promotion. So you started in a new position, and now you're probationary in that new position. So those are the workers that are being slashed. Now, we've been hearing from people across the country, across the district, across the community, who have either lost jobs or are afraid of losing jobs. And they're worried not only for themselves and their job and their family. Of course they're worried about that. But honestly, what they're most worried about is all of you. They're worried that you will not be able to get the services that you need. They're worried that you won't get your Social Security checks cut. They're worried that you won't get your tax returns actually looked at, that they'll start, for refusing to target the billionaires and instead go after regular people. They're worried that you're not going to get your food safety. They're worried about you. And so I think that this has been a really, really difficult time, and I think it's important to recognize that the cruelty and the chaos here are not a bug. They're actually the feature. That is the point, is to be as cruel and chaotic as possible, because I believe that what they're really trying to do is distract you from the fact that the big thing that they're trying to achieve is a $4.5 trillion tax cut for the wealthiest. And they might promise you that middle-class Americans are going to get something, but I promise you it's going to be like a couple weeks of groceries while they get gold bars and new luxury yachts. And I don't think we have a problem in this country with scarcity. I think we have a problem with greed.
That's right.
They would like you to blame the immigrant or the trans person or the poor person, when in fact it's the billionaires who are responsible for the fact that they're such wealthy. I find it interesting that Donald Trump ran on lowering costs for the American people on day one. Day one, remember that? He was going to lower inflation on day one. He was going to lower costs for the American people on day one. Well, here we are, and to date, he has not done a single thing to lower costs. He started a trade war with our biggest global trading partners, and he's instituting tariffs that are resulting in retaliatory tariffs that are going to raise the cost of housing for Americans, that are going to raise the cost of cars, and of course are already raising the cost of groceries. And so that is, I think of tariffs, if you institute tariffs in a smart, strategic way, and you combine it with investments in domestic manufacturing, it actually could be a very powerful tool to keep American jobs at home. So it's not like all tariffs are bad all the time. But if you just do random sweeping tariffs, and you do it on Canada and Mexico, and then what happens is it becomes a tax on consumers. because the tariff is being collected by the government so that they can pay for the $4.5 trillion tax cut. So not only are they taking your taxpayer dollars by this tax on consumers that they call a tariff, but they're also then slashing the programs and benefits that you rely on, all so that they can pay for the tax cut. Now, in addition, Trump has eliminated the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is the agency established by Congress to actually bring down predatory costs, right? Take on the big banks, make sure that if you're getting charged for all kinds of secret fees, that gets addressed, that they can't do that anymore. They've also slashed the Internal Revenue Service because under Democrats and the Inflation Reduction Act, we actually gave more money to the IRS so that the IRS could go after the wealthiest tax cheats. And that has produced enormous money because there are a lot of tax cheats that don't pay their bills. And so don't pay them even close to their fair share. And so what they've done is they've eliminated the the Internal Revenue Service people who were doing that work because they don't want to go after the wealthy tax cheats anymore. The IRS collected over $1 billion in past due taxes from millionaires because of the investment, which was a tiny investment that we made in more agents for the IRS. But Trump would rather let his wealthy friends evade taxes and let you bear the burden. Because don't forget, I'll give you one guess on what Elon Musk's Tesla company paid in federal taxes for the last couple of years. Zero. You got it, the big zero. So even as he's slashing through government agencies, by the way, Musk is making $8 million a day in government contracts. Wow. US government contracts going to Elon Musk. And he's working from the inside to cancel existing contracts and negotiate these sweetheart deals for companies like SpaceX and Starlink. All right, I know this is all exhausting. And I barely covered most of it. I'm just telling you. But I want to tell you what we're doing, and then I want to get to your questions. So in Congress, House Democrats are doing several things. First of all, we're doing as much as we can to use our platform to shine a light on these abuses, to make sure that you know what is happening, to make sure that every single American understands that. We're using our social media channels. If you're on social media, we're at Jayapal on all the channels you can imagine. We are recording weekly videos to tell people 3 good things, 3 bad things. We start with the bad, we end with the good, because there are some good things happening, we want you to know that. And then, of course, we're having these town halls. I'm communicating really closely with our partners on every angle to elevate stories, to make sure that we're advocating for them, like the funding freezes for NIH has huge impacts on biomedical research here in our district, basic science, at the UW, at Seattle Children's, at the Hutch. In fact, I'm going to be at the Hutch later this week talking to them. I was at CMAR, as I mentioned today. I did an immigrant labor roundtable today. So just trying to get as much information and coordinate and pick up stories that we can then elevate through our story bank, which you will see on our official website. We're also moving an inside-outside strategy to make sure that we call out the impacts on Republican districts and states. So you may have seen that Bernie Sanders and some others have been going across the country. I'm going to be doing that as well, both here in the state and across the country, into Republican districts. If they don't want to hold town halls, I'm not going to hold a town hall. It's really important to keep up the pressure in these Republican districts because we actually only need 3 to come over with us to block things in the House. And they need to feel the pressure because right now the only person they're listening to is Donald Trump. And I think we need to make sure that we are ensuring that they listen to all of their constituents and that they stand up to them. Second, we are supporting the lawsuits that are being filed across the country. This is the judicial branch strategy, right? So the first one, absolutely. And we're coordinating really closely. Shout out to Mick Brown, our Attorney General. There are plenty of challenges in court where members of Congress Congress have standing. We're filing amicus briefs, and there are a number of executive orders and Trump orders that have been blocked temporarily by the courts. The order to end birthright citizenship is blocked by multiple federal judges. Illegal funding freezes have been blocked. The stealing of our private information, to some extent, has been challenged in court. Handing the keys over to us for our personal data. And these are temporary wins, but we're going to continue to fight because here's the thing, it isn't clear that Trump and Musk and the administration will follow the courts. And everyone asks me, what happens if they don't follow the courts? Well, first of all, that is the first of many signs that we are in a constitutional crisis, and I would argue that that has already started to happen. I'll tell you about why I think that. But secondly, if they don't follow the orders of a judge, the enforcement of that is left to the U.S. Marshals. And the U.S. Marshals are under the Department of Justice. And the Department of Justice has now become an arm of the Trump administration instead of a self-regulating agency that responds to justice and not to the executive. So that is why I say that's the beginning of a constitutional crisis, and I would say that we're actually in the middle of that right now. It is not something that's far away, it's something that we're right at. And I'll give you one example. On Saturday, the chief judge of the district court, the federal district court in Washington, D.C., issued an order for the Trump administration to halt the imminent deportation of Venezuelans, a group of Venezuelans, who had been alleged to be gang members. Now, this judge is not some crazy liberal judge. This judge was actually the roommate of Justice Kavanaugh at Yale, and is so highly thought of by Justice Roberts that he was actually appointed by the Chief Justice to be on a, I forget exactly what it was called, but it was like a panel around civil liberties, I think, or I'm going to get it wrong, so I don't want to get it wrong. So anyway, but an important panel. Instead of complying with the judge's order, the Trump administration went ahead and allowed the planes to go to El Salvador, where they had promised the El Salvador government $6 million US taxpayer dollars to jail these immigrants without any due process, using a law that has not been used except in very rare cases of war. And they went ahead and did that. And when they did that, the right-wing Salvadorian president tweeted, "Oopsie, too late," mocking the judge's orders. That was retweeted by none other than Secretary of State Marco Rubio. So Trump then called for the impeachment of that federal judge who gave the order. And it provoked a very rare rebuke from the Chief Justice today, saying that calling for the impeachment of a justice is not an appropriate response to a policy disagreement. So my point here is just to say, this is one example, but if Trump continues to disregard the judiciary, then we get to the third and most important strategy, which is you.
Yes.
It's you. No pressure here. I'm going to tell you. But in countries where dictators or authoritarians have taken over, the only check on that is the public. That is the only check on that. And in many of these countries, actually you see democracies fall not over the course of years, but in a matter of months. That's how quickly democracies can fall. And I tell you that not to depress you, but to say that we need an organized, coordinated public movement that is strategic and smart to push back on all of this. And we are all going to have to be a part of that. Because there's no other way. I can't do it in Congress because he's not listening to Congress. I can use my platform and each of you can do that as well. And so Thursday on the campaign side, this is the official side, I can't really talk about the campaign side except to tell you that you can go check out our campaign website. We're doing something, the first training, called Resistance Labs, and you can sign up for it, where we're actually educating people about how this works in a situation where you have dictators taking over, right? What do people do? What are the strategies? What are the tactics? How do we get ourselves, as one really good labor friend of mine said to me, I told him what we were doing, he said, "Oh, you're getting a strike ready." And I said, "Yeah, I don't know if it's going to be a strike, but something that we are going to have to be ready for in our pushback, or some things, multiple of things." I do want you to know that your voices are already making a difference. Recent polling shows that 2/3 of Americans believe that Trump is not focused on lowering costs. And the number one thing that we knew already. The number one reason he won the election was because people thought he was going to do well in the economy. 56% of Americans say he's doing lousy on the economy. And over half of Americans say, I'm trying not to.
It's okay.
Americans say that Trump is bringing in corruption, not rooting it out. So we're getting there.
Yeah.
We're getting there. Elon Musk is deeply underwater in his popularity. Look, people do not want unelected billionaires slashing their Social Security and Medicare. Now, I've always believed that Democrats can't just be an opposition party. We also have to be a proposition party, right? We have to not just say what we're against, we have to say and be very clear that we stand up for poor and working people across this country. We believe in raising the minimum wage. We want to provide housing for everyone. We want to provide child care for everyone. We believe that the wealthy should pay their fair share so that we have the revenue to do the things that we need to do. And we believe that people should have one job and be able to sustain themselves on that, and be able to retire with dignity. We believe in a strong labor movement. We believe in standing up for the people. So we can never, in my view, abandon the most vulnerable. We believe in human dignity for people, whether it's immigrants, trans community, the poorest people amongst us. We believe in standing up together for everyone. So we need record participation from Democrats across the country, and hopefully a bunch of independents and Republicans, because many of them are seeing that this is not what they signed up for. And we need to welcome them in to our party, or into our coalition. And we need to focus on the 90 to 100 million voters across this country who are eligible to vote who don't vote because they think we don't care about them. We've got to mobilize those folks as well. So you're going to ask me what you can do, and I can, of course, give you more specifics. But I would say first, make a list of 10 people you know in Republican districts or states. I know you know them. Maybe they're not close. Maybe they're family, and you don't want to piss them off. Excuse my language. But make that list. They can be friends of yours from high school. You never talked to them, but you're reaching out, right? And ask them to talk to their members of Congress, because it's really important that they show up, that they make those phone calls, and that we start to expand the group of who we're talking to. Secondly, educate yourself on nonviolent resistance movements. That's what our Resistance Lab training is. Third, stay engaged. If you're tired, take the break you need and take care of yourself. Take care of yourself. Because you can't take care of anyone else if you're not taking care of yourself. But don't leave forever. Come back. We need you. And if you feel strong, reach out to somebody who feels vulnerable. And if you feel vulnerable, ask somebody for help. All of that is real. That's why we're doing these town halls too, because I want you to be in the community. And I want us to have this discussion, and I want you to reach out to the people on either side of you. And just say, we're here in this together. We are going to save our country. This is a great country. It's a country that allowed a 16-year-old girl with nothing in her pockets, an immigrant from India, to come to the United States by herself and become your United States Congressman. mic right here and right here. When you come up to the mic, just line up and you get 1 minute. Remember, we've done 120 of these, so very good. You get 1 minute. You won't hold the mic. Somebody will hold the mic for you. And there will be a little timer that goes off in 60 seconds. So don't make it hard for my wonderful staff. Just give up. Finish the question or the comment, and we'll get to as many as we can.
Can you move to the front of the stage?
Yeah.
You'll just have to hold the mic. Yeah. Some of the folks on the sides can't see.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay. All right. So, should we start over here? I saw you there, perfect.
Hi, Congresswoman Jayapal. My name is Stuart Hamilton. I live right across the street. And I want to thank you for everything that you're doing on our behalf and for having us here tonight. One of my biggest concerns is that a big part of the reason why we are in this mess right now is because half the people in this country over half the people are getting their information from non-traditional news sources, Facebook, TikTok, whatever. And I've had conversations with people that became contentious because the person I was talking to was completely unaware of things that have been said, things that have been promised by Trump. And we have to do something about this information problem that we have. I'd like to hear if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, thank you so much. This is a huge issue, and I think we're getting ready to do a town hall on disinformation at the UW. They've got some really great people who focus on this. We have to develop our own communications channels. And right now, unfortunately, I love being on your TV, on CNN or MSNBC, but that can't be the only way we communicate with people. We have to be on different forms of media, social media, and podcasts that have nothing to do with politics, but we bring politics in, right? So we're looking at all the ways. Frankly, we need to create our own ecosystem, our own chamber of communication, just like the right wing has, because even our social media has been taken over. And so I think you're absolutely right. We're going to do a town hall just on this question and dive into a little bit more, but I will tell you that there are a lot of people across the country that are thinking about how we do this better and how we make sure that we are communicating with people. There are a few of us in Congress that have large social media followings, some really large, like Alexandria and Bernie and others like that, and I'm like in the top 10, which is crazy. But it's not enough. It has to be broad, and we have to be not just communicating with bots and trolls, but actually with real people on things that they care about.
Yep.
Hi, my name is Lindsay. I live in Licton Springs. Thanks for being here today. I have a 2-year-old at home, and I'm having a baby in May. And my concerns about their basic health and safety are just so different now than they were a year ago, especially after hearing about the FDA meeting that got canceled that would be formulating the flu shot, for example. And I was like, how crazy is it that right now I'm Googling, can I go to Canada to get basic vaccines for my kids and myself? So I guess my question is am I right to be worried about that? And if so, what can Democrats do about it? And elected Democrats and just regular people.
Well, first of all, we've got you, right?
Yeah.
Everyone? The whole thing about vaccines is crazy. I grew up in India. If I hadn't gotten vaccines, I would be dead. There's just no question in my mind about that. And I think that it's so unfortunate that there's all this misinformation being spread. And listen, if it's a choice that you can make and you're not going to affect other people, that's one thing. But if it's a choice that you make and it affects people who are immune compromised or other, your classrooms with people, I feel very strongly that it's important that we tell people the science. And so you're not wrong to be worried. I think that we will have to fight back on all of these points. And I think the extent to which you can make sure that living in a state like Washington, you're gonna have protections for a lot longer than anybody else. And hopefully always, because we will continue to have a public health system funded by the state, even if the federal government decides not to do that, right? So, and yes, these are the things we're gonna have to take on, because we want your babies to grow up in a country that respects them and that keeps them healthy and safe. And I promise you, we will do everything that we can to fight back. On the things that you can do, you know, as a new mom with another baby on the way, you have to assess what you have room for. But there's lots of ways that people can be engaged. You can write a letter to the editor. You can write an op-ed about your fears. You can tell your story and put it out on video. You can, you know, as I said, call other people that you know and have them weigh in districts where they may not have a member of Congress who's on the right side of these issues. So we can help you get engaged, and we'll help people figure out what the right space is for their activism. But my main message is don't give up, and we are going to do everything we can to make sure this is a country that you can be proud of for your kids.
Hi, thank you so much for coming. My name is Arlene Plevin. I have 55 seconds, and I actually have 2 questions. I understood Schumer did what he did because if the government was stalled, all the federal workers wouldn't be allowed back in. It would be a much larger mass firing. So I'm wondering about that. And my second question is, what do we do to help Ukraine, another democracy which has been betrayed and abandoned by such a heinous, embarrassing, mortifying, ludicrous, despicable way?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more. I spoke at the United for Ukraine rally just a couple of weeks ago at the Seattle Center, and you know, I cannot believe, it's hard for me to understand how even Republicans who are with us on this fight and all that we know about Putin and what he is doing to destroy Ukraine and to continue his romp through Europe and the rest of the world, now we're embracing him. It's one thing to open conversation, it's another thing to embrace a dictator and do exactly what he wants. And that's what's happening right now, and you can see it. It broke my heart to see President Zelensky in the Oval Office. It was embarrassing, it was disgusting, it was just horrific. So I'm on the Foreign Affairs Committee. I just joined the Foreign Affairs Committee this year, actually, and we're trying to do everything we can to keep some standing in the world. None of us want to go to other countries anymore and visit even. What used to be CODELs, congressional delegations, were bipartisan. And when you were there, you sort of put aside your differences and you stood up as America. But it's difficult to go anywhere in the world right now and have people understand what we have done to our global leadership and what that means for countries like Ukraine, but also for the rest of the world. So we'll keep fighting on that front. On the Schumer thing, this is an important point. Look, I think you could argue that yes, it would have been difficult because federal workers would have been laid off. But the thing is, if you give away everything for nothing, what's the point? Then we might as well be Republicans. I mean, we should just roll over then. To me, it makes no sense to say, yes, I understand this would have been a problem, but it would have been a worse problem because it will be a worse problem because A, we just were complicit in giving away a bunch of funding for nothing, right? A bunch of cuts for nothing. We didn't negotiate a single thing. This was not negotiated at all. This was a complete Republican bill. But also, as I said, what does it mean? This agreement only takes us through September. So now what happens? Are we going to roll over every time they threaten a shutdown? I think the American people would have been with us.
Yes.
56% of the American people. negotiate. Patty Murray had a 30-day continuing resolution that would have kept the government funded at the same levels for 30 days so we could have agreed on the final funding agreement. We could have insisted that they come to the negotiating table. And if they didn't, and they wanted to keep the shutdown going, well, good luck once people don't get their first Social Security check, right? So I just think there's a strategy here that we have to be clear on, that we can't give away everything for nothing. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Great to see you. My name is Leonard Smith. I guess my statement here is more about the lack of strategy that I'm seeing from the Democratic Party and the lack of some basic organizing principles around simple messaging. A lot of what you're talking about, I think everybody agrees with, but how we get the message out and how we simplify the message so that people can engage in rallies, can engage in street action, and be angry, I think we're missing. Seeing the Democratic Party sort of divide against itself is not good for unity, is not good to get that common messaging out. Looking at the judicial strategy, which I think is really important, but they don't care about the judicial strategy. It doesn't matter to them. It's slow, it's cumbersome, it makes us all feel good, but in the end, they're just going to do what they do. You've seen this movie before. You've seen how they come in, how tech companies come in, run fast, and break things.
Wow, Leonard, listen. We've known each other for a long time. I don't disagree with you on that. I think the message is pretty simple. They're stealing from us so they can give themselves tax breaks and destroy the government so that it doesn't provide any benefits for you. To me, it's like a pretty simple message on what they're doing. Democracy and working people are tied together in my mind. If you don't have, people sometimes say, what does it mean to be a progressive? And I joke and I say it just means you're the first to the best and most just idea. And then everybody else runs to catch up with us, right? But if I really think about what it means three things to me. It means that you believe in genuine social and economic opportunity for every person, that you believe in the common good, right? And that you believe in government's role to enact the first two. Because government is the only entity that is of scale that can provide that benefit. And so we have to tie all of those things together, and it may not be the exact same message for everyone, because guess what? I'm in the same party, well, I was in the same party as Joe Manchin. So we have different constituencies, and we have to speak to different constituencies. But the core of it is that we believe in standing up for poor and working people, and we're going to be relentless about doing it against the billionaires that are trying to steal from us and destroy government so they can take the programs and benefits that matter to people, right? I don't know that at the end of the day, I think we have work to do to make sure we're all on the same page, and if the House and the Senate in particular have to be on the same page. But I also think that there is more success than you might imagine, that the numbers are moving, that people, the fury at Republican town halls was not all organized, paid for people, as the Republicans said. It was regular folks, veterans, who were really angry that veterans were being slashed and that their care was being slashed. It was seniors who were really angry about their nursing homes being closed because of Medicaid cuts. So I think we just have to stay in it and continue to try to get better every step, and continue to have an organized, coordinated movement. That will require probably some big entities like the labor movement, women's organizations, kind of coming together over a set of strategies. And it'll require all of us being in the mindset to be there at those moments, if that makes sense. So we're going to keep working on it, and I think it's, look, I don't think we've been complacent for a long time. We haven't had to fight for our democracy, and we are going to have to fight for it now. Luckily, they don't keep me to one minute. Sometimes they try. They're like, we have 6 more questions.
I'm a climate adaptation scientist
National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I'm asking this question on behalf of my community. We're working under incredible uncertainty right now.
Thank
We
you.
got you.
Take a deep breath. We love you.
We got you.
40% of my team was fired. Today I had to tell a grad student who had traveled here from Maine that the person she was most excited to meet was not available for her to talk to. My question from another union member, thank you. Is Congress thinking about the long-term loss of science capacities that we are experiencing, the long-term economic consequences of that, and the role of our government agencies in producing a future that we can live in on this planet?
Thank you so much for your work and for your question. Yes, we are. And I just think you've moved everyone. All of us feel emotional listening to you because we see it happening in front of us. And we know the consequences. You're gonna make me cry too. We know the consequences, right? We know that this has, everything that's happening has long-term consequences. Even if we can stop or restore some of these cuts, the damage and the people that we're losing, the human beings that we're losing, the knowledge that we're losing, is going to be irreplaceable. And I think that's one of the things that really scares me, is no matter how much we do right now, we are going into a hole. We are. We're losing scientists, we're losing federal workers who have been the experts in their fields, as you probably are. And we're not going to have that knowledge. And so that is why it is so important that you speak up, that we hear these stories, that we hear. I guarantee you there are at least a dozen people here who are inspired by your story to actually take action, right? And so, right?
Yeah.
So I promise we will do everything we can, and we do understand the impact, and it's why we're trying to figure out, we've never been in this situation. We've never had somebody who wants to be king. We don't have kings in America. We don't have kings in America. I just was in Philly and I was feeling very down after the whole last week's shenanigans with the Senate. And so I went and I looked at all the original founding documents, you know, all through historical Philadelphia. And I was just reminded that, it's not that I didn't know this, but I was reminded that democracy was really messy, even then. Like it was, you know that whole, to create a more perfect union? Yeah, it was really imperfect. And it still is. And it was great, all at the same time, right? It was a radical experiment. And we've managed to hold on to it, but we are in the throes of something really, really serious. Really serious. So thank you again for just all of your work.
Congresswoman, my name is Sarah, and thank you for being here today. I spoke with you last week, actually, on your phone, so, on the phone, town hall, but I'll still say this is my first in-person town hall.
Awesome. We count it.
Yes. I spoke about education last week and asked about how we can resist, but today I'm actually here speaking as a mom. So first and foremost, I'm a mom of a trans son. And while people are thinking about leaving for Canada for immunizations, the trans community has, parents have people around the country saying what we do is child abuse, which is not. Gender affirming care has saved my son's life, and it continues to save my son's life, and I'm in it for the fight for him. He is a wonderful, wonderful child, and I'm not tired. I'm angry, but I'm not tired, and I want to know how we're going to keep gender affirming care.
Yes. Well, I think you know this is super personal for me as well, so I join you. And we are in a state where Nick Brown, our Attorney General, filed that lawsuit around gender affirming care for minors. And thank you, Nick, because this was incredibly important. And I think that we have to recognize this community is 0.05 of 1% of Americans. What kind of bullies go after 0.05 of 1% of people who are just trying to live their lives? This is not about trans people. It is not about bathrooms. It's just about bullies. And we have to fight back against that, and we have to protect the science around gender affirming care. We have to also recognize that there's a lot of people that don't know, right? And so it's hard, but we do have to invite people into the conversation, because I know that when my daughter first started talking about it, I didn't totally understand. I loved her no matter what, but I didn't understand everything. And so let's give people a chance to understand. And let's hope for the best in those people, to remind them that these are our kids. They're all of our kids. And we're not going to bully them, and we're not going to stop them from getting the care that they need. And I will just tell you, in Congress, I was again proud of Democrats. We held every Democrat on an anti-trans bill that went through the House, and we're hopefully going to continue to do that, not allow them to bully our kids.
Hi. I'm another scientist, and I also have a trans daughter, and she's autistic as well. She's transferring to Western Washington this year, which is kind of a miracle. It's a miracle that we made it through the pandemic in one piece. But both these speakers brought up a lot for me. So I work for a federal contractor and manage grant review for a program called the Congressionally Mandated Medical. It's the DoD one, the medical research one. And it's just been cut by like 60%. So I do not think it will continue. I don't know the status. We just found this out. No one's talking about it. But it's probably going to go away. It's a pretty unique project, because a lot of the grants that I have managed are on things that affect active duty military veterans, but also the American public. Things like the effects of toxic exposures, accelerated aging because of toxic exposures, because of traumatic brain injuries, rare cancers that are more prevalent in veterans because of the toxic exposure. And personally, my father is a Vietnam vet, and he was exposed to a lot of Agent Orange. He has chronic inflammation, chronic pain, as he's had for decades because of this. And I see in the work that I manage, I see his story, his symptoms. And my youngest sister was born with Agent Orange cluster. And it feels so horrible that these people are being abandoned. Not just the military part, but also the science part. What can we do to save our scientific infrastructure and our medical infrastructure?
Yeah, well, again, for all of the parents of trans kids and friends of our trans community, just my heart goes out to you, so to your child as well. as you may remember, under Democrats, we passed the PACT Act. That was what invested in a lot of the care for veterans who had been affected by toxic chemicals.
Yes.
That is what they are cutting back. And in this bill that just passed, it included essentially big cuts to the PACT Act. Now, I believe we need to reduce war. I believe in a Department of Peace. I think the Department of Defense is the only federal agency that's never passed an audit. Literally, it's literally failed 7 audits. But I believe if we're gonna send people into war, jeez, we gotta take care of them when they come back, right? And so it's especially horrific that these contracts are being cut because they're taking care of the people that we sent into war to fight for our country.
Because they're diseases.
Yeah, and so I think that this is really, really, these are the egregious things that are happening. I want to say, anybody who's got a story like this, please contact our staff or get a card on your way out so we can tell you. We have a story bank where we're collecting some of these things. And so if you have a story to tell us what it is, write it down. We have a little form you can fill out on our website so that we can start to collect these things and we can talk about them and put them out. And if you're willing to be public, we'll even give you little guidelines on how to film a little video that we will elevate. So there are a lot of important stories that are coming out tonight, and I just want to make sure we capture them. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Jayapal, for your tireless work on our behalf. I'm Andrea Dreesen. I've lived in Ballard a long time, and every day I ask myself this question. Today I will ask you, where are the former U.S. presidential leaders? Biden. We need their influence, their followers, their cred more than ever. Are they afraid? Are they getting death threats? Are they afraid of losing their security detail? I really would like to know what you think it is.
I do not know. I don't know where they are. I really don't. I'm sorry to say that. I don't know how to answer it, except that I don't know where they are. Some would be more helpful than others. I don't know. Yeah. I mean, look, I think one of the things that times of crisis do, with grammar, times of crisis do, is either you rise up and you develop courage, which I've always said in organizing, strength comes in times of crisis. That's when people are tested, that's when you dig deep, and that's when you develop the strength and the backbone to stand up. And for other people, they fade into the woodwork. And I think this room and all the rooms I've been talking to are full of people who are gonna bring strength. But there are, I'm not seeing it everywhere. I'm not seeing it with some of the companies that are abandoning DEI. I'm not seeing it with industry leaders who are not speaking up against the horrific economic impact that is happening now. I'm not seeing it in a lot of places. And these aren't necessarily even people who need to be scared on a personal level. That's a different thing. If an immigrant doesn't want to stand up and be at the forefront, I can't blame somebody who might be deported, right? People decide when they're going to take risks, and everybody has different calculations and considerations. But I think if you sign up for leadership, be a leader.
Hi, Congresswoman. My name is Lauren Greenwood. Thank you so much for doing this and for continuing to stand up for us. I think especially knowing that you are sticking by trans people means so much, especially when so many in our party are abandoning them. I used to live in California, Gavin Newsom, what a disappointment. I kind of want to actually jump off of that question and the question earlier about sort of rhetoric in the political theater, and I know that there are more important things than that right now, but personally, wearing coordinated colors and holding up auction signs just isn't enough. And I appreciate that we are a big tent. I love that we are collaborative, but you can be flexible and still have a spine. And we saw people in South Korea, climbing over fences to stop their coup. And you say we're in a constitutional crisis, and so I wonder, how can we justify doing anything less than climbing over fences?
Everybody knows what fences are, so everybody can do that. I think to me, the question is, how do we do something that is of the scale that it is more than a nightly headline, if that. And so that's what I've been working towards, both on the official side and the unofficial side, is really gathering some of our most prominent partners who can make a campaign that we can put together a campaign that we can invite people into that is strategic and coordinated. And it's difficult to get that right now, but that's what we're working on. But I do think, in our Resistance Lab training on Thursday, we're going to go through a lot of tactics, and people are free to do whatever tactics they want, and they all can come together, and sometimes things start at a very grassroots level and then they multiply. Like, I don't know if people have been involved in the Tesla takedowns, some interesting activity happening there. I personally believe in nonviolent resistance movements, and so I think everything we do should be nonviolent. But I think that this is going to take a little bit of time to get it to a place where it's fully coordinated. And I've been arrested several times in civil disobedience protests, so I have no trouble chaining myself to a fence if I thought it was going to make a difference. And right now, I'm trying to figure out what does, and so I'm interested in all the thinking and the thoughts around it, and also the things that people do organically. You never know what's going to take off, so I'm looking for those as well.
Do you feel like the rest of the party feels that way as well?
We're getting there. I'm trying not to be too negative.
Thank you.
No, I mean, look, I'm an organizer. You elected an organizer to Congress. That's what I did for 20 years. So I have a different view of it. And there are many who do see it the same way, but we're still working. We don't even have the same analysis of what happened in the election yet. So it is a bit challenging, and we're trying to corral from the inside as well as the outside.
Thank you.
Hi, this is my first time here. I'm finding it terrifying and inspirational. So,
That's what we wanted to achieve.
One thing I've decided to do is try to fund the state of Washington, so I'm going to give voluntary taxes. Apparently you can go on the website and you can give money. I think I'm going to give mine to public health, and I'll give it as a percentage of my income, like I would if we had an income tax here. And my question is, why are billionaires so fucking greedy? Why do they and don't they realize that they get cancer, that they get infectious diseases, that they need ERs? Why are they voting? Why are they taking down things that they need to?
Wow. Well, first of all, we got voters on so grateful to you for that. And on the question of billionaires being greedy, we facilitate greed in this country by having an unequal tax system. And somebody recently asked me how I feel about Jeff Bezos moving out because we apparently are charging too much in taxes now here in Washington State. I said, well, we moved from the 49th most regressive state to the 50th most regressive state in taxes. And I'm sorry, when you have hundreds of billions of dollars of wealth, but the average Amazon worker is earning $37,000 a year, that's horrifying. It's ludicrous. It's disgusting. It's shameful. We are a rich country, and we don't begrudge people wealth. But when it means that so many people are poor and struggling, when they're providing the profit for those people to get rich, that's what I have a problem with. And that's why I have the Ultra Millionaire Tax Act with Senator Warren that would just say if you earn a certain amount of over $50 million, if you have over $50 million in wealth, anyone here? If you have more than $50 million in wealth, you just pay just about pay your damn fair share. You're really getting me riled up here. Much calmer.
Hi, my name is Lisa. I'm in middle school right now. And
All right, good.
one, I love your shirt.
Indonesian.
Yes. Two, my school, I love my school. We have a teacher there, our social studies teacher, who teaches us so much about like our world right now. And she, at the beginning of each class, she shows us some good news in our country. And I really appreciate her for doing that because it shows us that even though how bad things are right now, there's still something good going on. And right now we're doing a project called PIT that like each of us focus on an issue that we like really care about. And right now mine is on mass deportation. And so my question for you is like
Tell me again what your project is.
PIT, it's about mass deportation.
Oh,
And right now I'm wondering any solutions that you think there are right now, even in this dark time.
Yeah, I mean, I think that first of all, I love having middle school students here. Thank you, parents, for bringing your kids. I love that. So on mass deportation, it's stunning to me how many people do seem to think that Trump is doing a decent job on immigration. I think it's because the effects of it have not been felt on the country of mass deportations. And I also think if you look at the polling and dive into it, people actually don't want mass deportation. They only answer yes to the polling question if you don't give them another option. If you give them the option for mass deportation or humane immigration reform that includes both border security and reforming the immigration system so that it works, they will always pick that. We still have a lot of love in this country for immigrants. People still remember their ancestors, they remember their own stories. They believe that immigration is good for the United States. And so I think the answer is, first of all, to reject these cruel solutions. We are a humane, dignified country who benefits from the contributions of immigrants. Number two, we need a real fix to the immigration system. I'm the ranking member of the Immigration Subcommittee in the House. That means I'm the top Democrat on that committee. And unfortunately, I don't get to decide hearings or anything like that, so I just have to kind of be in opposition mode in Congress. But also saying, what is our solution? We have a bill that would, yes, help invest in the border and modernize the border with technologies and more people and more immigration judges. But really, if you want to fix this, you have to reform the immigration system. It has not been reformed in 30 years. So the quotas and the caps that we have are from 30 years ago. And I think we should have fairness for US citizens to be able to allow their spouses and their kids to be here with them and have a path to citizenship. I think we should allow our workers in essential industries to have ways that they can stay. I think that if we have people who have been here for more than 10 years and they don't have any criminal convictions or anything, they've just been working, let's give them a path to citizenship. And let's reform the immigration system so it actually works together.
Thank you for being here. My question is maybe multi-party. It's been 2 months and it's kind of horrific to think how much has slid in the last 2 months. And to do another 3 years, 10 months of this is even more horrific. And I thank you for being here, but some tough love. The Democrats have been really ineffective at stopping it, and I don't see that changing, and I'm sure there's a lot behind the scenes. But it's not being messaged, and it is really weak. And I know a lifelong Democrat, and always will be. My question is, what are the Democrats doing to stop this currently, and what are the Democrats doing to unite around future leaders of the party and the messaging to ensure that 3 years, 10 months from now, that we're in a very different place?
Yes.
welcome, we love you too. So this is not just one group of people that have to message this. This is my big message. I have lots of critiques, you've heard some of them tonight, of my own party. We have to be in this together. Nobody else is going to come in and save us. Nobody else is going to create a message and unite everybody around it. We're going to have to do it ourselves. And so I'm not saying this to deflect from the criticism, believe me. I've been quite vocal already tonight. But I'm just saying that I think, I get this all the time from people, like, what are the Democrats going to do? And I'm like, well, aren't we all Democrats here? What are we going to do? Right? We all have to do this together because it's impossible to, I don't necessarily, I've said this publicly, I think we don't have a clear presidential candidate. We don't really have a leader of the party. So we're struggling with that. And we have institutions that are outdated. And we have fundamental problems with the structures of democracy in this country. The electoral college needs to go. The filibuster needs to go. We don't have that right now. And so it makes it very difficult for people to see that Democrats can be effective. Because guess what? We pass 1,000 bills through the House. Minimum wage, collective bargaining, universal child care, investments in housing. They don't get anywhere in the Senate. Because you need 60 votes in the Senate, and we haven't had 60 votes in a very long time in this country. So unless we focus on why we lost this election, it was not just this election, it was 10 to 15 years of losing working class people because Democrats didn't stand up and fight hard enough. And we embraced neoliberal economic theory, but so the answer is not to, abandon small dollar. There's some centrist groups that are saying abandon small dollar donations and don't talk about the minimum wage and attack trans. No, that's not the way. The way is to actually show that we can stand up and fight for working people and poor people across this country. And to me, that message is really clear. Is everyone in the Democratic Party embracing it? Not so much. Some are. I think we've got more populist sentiment now than we've had in a long time. But there are still people who are wanting to run for president or governors who are railing on trans people and interviewing white nationalists because they think that's the way forward. I don't happen to agree with that. So yeah, this is a fight. It's not clear. We don't have a clear message. We don't have a clear leader, but we have us. We have us. And the party is the people. That's what a party is. That's what the Democratic Party is. So I would just say, I have a lot of critiques. I can share them with you until, for a long time. Because I'm on the progressive side of the spectrum, as you've noticed. And everyone always blames progressives for everything, no matter what we do. But I actually think that it's not an ideological battle anymore. It's about whether within the party, it's not an ideological battle. It's about whether we stand up for poor people and working people, and whether we call out the billionaires that are screwing us and taking over this country, who are unelected, by the way, some of them. So that's how I would answer that. Thank you.
Fascism has come to power in America, and all people of conscience, all of us here today, sooner or later, face subjugation or extermination. We're in a fight not just for policy or for democracy, but for survival. And it's hard to survive when so-called allies stab us in the back. When will Washington's legislators be acting to remove bastards like Chuck Schumer from their positions of leadership?
I don't know how to answer that. You know how I feel about what happened last week. The Senate elects its own leaders. I think there are plenty of people who could lead us forward, and I think they're going to have to make that decision. I'm going to call out what I think is not behavior that benefits the party or the people of this country, and that's what I did tonight. Thank you.
Yeah.
The last few questions have actually touched on what I was going to bring up about our party leadership, and I'm discouraged as you said tonight, a treasurer, and would love to see him not as the minority leader. So since there's no question to be asked, I just want to say thank you for all that you're doing. This is my first time here, and I feel encouraged by the people that are in this room and the work that you're doing. So.
Yes. Members that are in the room, but Indivisible has called for Senator Schumer to step down, and so I know that there are lots of calls around this, and we'll have to see what happens. The Senate Democrats choose their own leader, so this is, I think we'll see. But I just will say we need strong leadership. There's no question about it. We need people that have backbones and spines that are willing to stand up and fight for us.
Amen. 5 questions, all on this side. So do you want to take them all in a row, or?
Yeah. Let's take them all together. This is Rachel's way of saying it. You only need that one minute for each question. So let's take them all together, and I'll try to remember. I don't have a pen here, but I'll try to remember all the questions.
Okay. I can plan on the one question, but I'm Lisa Satin, and I'm a senior housing advisor, and I live in the Northwest, lifelong progressive voter. This has been a really hard last few months, and the first time around was no picnic either. I'm trying to do something more locally based, and I guess my question is, we've got senior housing, the Norris Home is here represented, and for many of you in this area, the Norris Home is just right up on Finney Ridge, and just beyond that is a place called FOSS. FOSS was 90 years as a nonprofit long-term care community. Norris Home, 70 years. Built for this purpose of Medicaid, low-income senior housing, and they closed it. And it's a nonprofit that we think is a safe nonprofit, which is the new nonprofit. And those are the rich people in our community. They own Skyline, for example, and they're very powerful. And they go for communities with beautiful property and views, and they say they're going to remodel, and they kick everyone out. So, okay, 131 apartments. Everyone has had to leave, so 86 people have left, and they'll be turning that into 32 luxury apartments with no Medicaid, no assisted living, no DSHS, and DSHS has not been helpful. So I guess that's my question, how do we get the local people involved to turn around?
Great, thank you.
Hi, my name is Eric. 2 quick things. As we fight the Medicaid cuts, please remember to center the stories of our disabled community.
Yes.
Like my son, who's a proud employee of this city because he has a job coach paid by Medicaid, and he pays for a good part of that himself out of his wages. Wow. Second, as a retired Foreign Service officer, please, I appreciate everything you said about foreign policy. Please urge your colleagues in the Senate. There's no reason they should be granting unanimous consent on any Trump crony ambassadors. You should be blocking all of that. Both David and Beard, nobody voted against Marco Rubio. He's been a disaster.
Yes.
Madam Congresswoman, it's forecasted that in 2030, Texas, Florida, and Idaho will gain 9 seats in the House of Representatives, while California, Oregon, Wisconsin, Illinois, and New York will lose those 9. This frightens me. How can we make it easier for people to move from blue states and build lives here? Why are people leaving blue states for red states? One of my own coworkers left Washington for Texas last year because they needed housing for their children that they could not get here. How can we create an abundance of housing in blue states?
Thank you for taking the time to organize this event tonight. Something that I've been thinking about, and I appreciate that you recognize that not only do our members of Congress and senators and other elected officials have power, but the people have power as well. And I appreciate you emphasizing that we have ways to resist using nonviolent methods or civil disobedience or other sort of strategies. I'm wondering, and you also mentioned the Tesla takedowns, but having a president who is saying that it should be illegal to boycott Tesla. And also seeing illegal permanent residents being disappeared in the night for protesting nonviolently. I'm wondering what you're going to be doing to protect constituents and residents in this country when we are using our power in the ways that are guaranteed in our Constitution. Thank you.
My name is Dixie. I have been wondering for years, you know, all of us have seen, sometimes in person, groups of people, and you've heard about people whose hearts are breaking because they love someone who happens to be a little bit different. All over the nation, this is happening. There is one group that this has been happening to for centuries, and that is the Jewish people. And I want to talk to you because I've got you right now. I wanted to tell you that I have taught in universities and colleges and in groups where a lot of them are together. And I will never forget one young lady who came up to me after I had talked about Jesus as being one of the leaders, and she said, "But Jesus wasn't a Jew." I want you to know that this woman was a daughter of someone, she was a very elitist university. So I want to tell you all, in case you don't know.
We want to hear a question, not a
Okay,
lecture.
I've already asked it, but I want you to know that Jesus was a Jew, and you may have someone in your family.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay, so we've got 5 questions. Let me try and run through them. And we have about 7 minutes, so that's like a minute per question. Okay, right? And then I got like a minute to close. You go. Okay, very good. All right, very good. North Home. We actually looked into this, and this is private equity, as the questioner said. This is private equity that has bought up this senior center. This is happening around the country. We are looking at legislative solutions for this. Very difficult because private equity is going to housing. Now, the FTC under Lena Khan, we were part of this, sued RealPage for driving up prices in the housing market. So there are some things we're looking at on the legislative side around housing, around senior homes, around healthcare clinics. We're seeing it in every avenue. And so keep up your organizing, see what you can do on the local side. But this is what we're seeing with private equity trying to take over everything and then turning it into luxury housing instead of affordable housing. At the same time, I've made it a priority to invest in affordable housing. So many of the community-funded projects that I'm able to put forward as my specific, they used to be called earmarks, now they're called community-funded projects. Now they've been gotten rid of by the Republicans, the Democrats put it back, then the Republicans got rid of it again, even though they took the money into their districts. And so we call it say no and take the dough, that's what they do all the time. But we are continuing to try to get huge investments into affordable housing. And if you remember, that was part of Build Back Better, was to really invest in housing. And this sort of goes to the blue, see what I'm doing here, 2 questions in one. This goes a little bit to the blue states and red states question. It is, everything is expensive. Housing, there's nowhere in the country that you can afford housing on the minimum wage. And childcare costs are now outpacing housing costs. And housing has outpaced inflation. The increase in housing has outpaced inflation. So we're lost on every angle here unless we actually invest in affordable housing, both the construction and the building of it, but also in the vouchers and the rental assistance and all the other ways that we are trying to provide for people. Medicaid, I am so grateful that you brought that up. This is one of the big things that Medicaid does, is it supports our most vulnerable communities, including those who are disabled. And so we have to make sure we are protecting this. And it is just incredibly important that we keep lifting up the benefits of Medicaid. If you're talking about Medicaid, I use senior nursing homes a lot because it resonates for people a lot. I use pregnancy and birth. I'm going to make sure that I include disability in there as well. But the extent to which you can have a story insert, if you're willing to talk about your story on video or send us something, we would love to record that, because I think this is exactly what we need to be putting forward. On Trump crony ambassadors and appointments is what I wrote down. So I think this is all about the Senate. Once again, caving on a bunch of things. I mean, that's where a lot of the dissatisfaction in our Democratic base emerged, because we don't get a vote on appointments in the House. That is only the Senate. And to see senators consistently vote for all of these people who are now destroying the economy. Why? Because we think that somehow the Senate is some friendly, bipartisan place. No, it's not. This is all a war zone. And I don't mean to take a war zone lightly, so maybe I'll scratch that comment. This is a giant fight for our democracy. And we can't take butter knives in. We have to be willing to stand up and fight back. And to say no in a wonderful, nonviolent, but clear and concise way. Yes. Okay, dissent and free speech. This is really a big issue. I'm on the Judiciary Committee, as you may know. I just led a letter about the detention and deportation attempt on Mahmoud Khalil. For those of you who don't know, this is utilizing a very arcane provision in the Immigration and Nationality Act that allows the Secretary of State to deport somebody that is seen as a foreign policy threat. It is ludicrous to essentially say, if you don't agree with a view, that is a foreign policy threat. Our free speech rights have been protected, whether it's for things that are incredibly horrific and disagreeable, like the KKK marching through town, or whether it's Nazis saying whatever horrific thing that they are saying, or whether it's disagreements on the war in Israel and Gaza. You cannot deport somebody because you disagree with them. They are not a foreign policy threat because they launched protests on a college campus. So this is in the courts, but I will tell you that we got over 100 members of Congress to sign the letter in just a 48-hour period. And it's really saying this is not about Israel and Palestine. This is about the free speech rights of everybody. And if you are going to curtail the free speech rights of one group of people, you can easily curtail it for anybody else. So everybody, whether you think those protests were right or wrong, whether you agreed with what was said or didn't, it is our constitutional right to be able to protest and to air our views. And so I think that's just really important. I wasn't sure what the last question, the last comment was, but it was passionately delivered. And I think that we need to be against anti-Semitism, against xenophobia, against Islamophobia, against transphobia, against all forms of hate. And that is a beautiful place to end, and to say to you how incredibly grateful I am that I get to represent you. And that every town hall, every call, every constituent who comes up to me, what I see is deeply loving, generous hearts. And I believe that it is love that drives out hate. And I'm so grateful to be in the struggle with you all. Thank you, everybody.